So when I teach marriage classes, I always begin with the one flesh relationship that God intends for a man and a woman committed to each other for life. God says in Genesis 2:24, the man and woman shall leave their father and mother, and they shall hold fast to each other, and they shall become one flesh. Now, many people believe that becoming one flesh is addressing only the physical relationship. And while that's true, I believe that being one flesh is all encompassing. It includes not only physical oneness, but spiritual, mental, emotional, and missional oneness as well. Missional oneness is headed the same time, the same direction for the same reasons. Now, that's why pornography is so damaging to a relationship between a husband and a wife. In today's conversation with professional counselor Heidi Erickson, we have an honest discussion about the challenges, the temptation of pornography, and how it affects all areas of the marriage relationship. These conversations are challenging, but so important. And as always, we value your feedback. So here's my conversation with Heidi Erickson. Well, Heidi, thanks for joining us again. We really appreciate your wisdom. And the last time was, I think, very eye-opening for a lot of parents to see what their kids are going through.
Thanks. I'm so glad to be back with you and talk more about this. It's really important to me because it's important to so many people that I work with.
So last time we really focused our conversation on parents, and we talked about the 3 A's, the pornography being anonymous. You can do it privately, affordability, obviously, and then availability. It's everywhere. And I really encourage, if you are listening to this podcast today and you didn't listen to the last one, go back and listen to that one, because so many things on there that not only addressed kids, teenagers and their temptations, but also just all the helps that we have as parents that can guide us and help protect our kids in these areas. So, but we want to keep cranking a little bit. And today, Heidi, let's keep talking to parents, but also we'll kind of go in and out of relationships as well, because you can't talk about the dangers of pornography without addressing the relationships that it impacts along the way. And I think we'll see, so many people, I believe, they look at porn and they say, man, this is private. It's not hurting anybody. I'm not out having an affair. I'm not hurting another person. So, what's the big deal? What's the big deal of pornography? So let's start there. What's the big deal of pornography? What are the dangers?
First off, I'm not hurting anybody. I just want to say that I have clients who have symptoms of PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. It used to be reserved for war veterans, right? Not anymore. Post-traumatic stress symptoms are all over these clients that are in my practice. And so it's really hurting. It is hurting the people. It's hurting the marriages. It's hurting, it's breaking the vows. It's hurting your testimony. And it's hurting your children. We'll get into more of that as far as, your attention and things like that, but it's absolutely hurting people. It's a whole another thing is, we actually can't validate that the girls and women that you're seeing, and men and boys online, are of age. There's no way to see, and there are underage people. I've read many testaments of people who say, hey, I was raped it's on Pornhub, and I was underage. It's not consensual. I was a child. And it's on there, and they don't always take it off, even after lawyers, or they'll take it off and put it back on. It's horrific. So there are a lot of people hurt by pornography. I just want to say that. And then getting into the hurting yourself, those who are, so the mentally, the psychologically. I mentioned it last time, but it rewires the brain by hijacking the brain's reward system. So let me break it down a little bit. So think about food. It's easier. So reward system, we need to eat to survive. So eating and food is pleasurable in addition to being nurturing our bodies. So we keep doing it and then we stay alive and go back again. We want to eat. We're hungry. It feels good. Okay. So similar with sex, it's mutually pleasurable. It's connection, procreation. There are many reasons that, to do that. And, so that's the cycle there, the reward cycle. Porn takes this God-given desire, the reward system that was designed for bonding, connection, procreation. It warps it by giving fake material, exaggerated material that just isn't real. And porn is like a supernormal stimulus. It's what is called as a supernormal stimulus, meaning instead of, in that cycle, your wife, who's real and natural, it's this exaggerated, it's like photoshopped, it's, camera angles, all kinds of crazy stuff that they're doing that isn't real. So it's exaggerated. It is a supernormal stimulus. And then giving that to your brain, it hijacks this system. And then your brain no longer thinks that what's real and natural and normal is attractive any longer.
Talk to the person who would, and you mentioned this is God's idea. He ordained sex between a man and a woman. In Scripture, we read that Rachel was beautiful in form and appearance. And so Scripture is not saying that there's this aspect of beauty that can be appreciated, but in our sinful state, that aspect of beauty that can be appreciated can slide pretty quickly into a lustful viewing and turning a woman or a man into an object.
Right. Yeah, it's good. It's healthy to appreciate beauty. We see it in nature. We see it in people. And that's a good thing. But when, lust comes in, if you just let your eyes rest there and objectify, start to make that person in sexual and something that isn't actually happening before your eyes. The person is walking before your eyes and you're making it something different. You're sexualizing the person or the body parts. So appreciating beauty, but not over sexualizing the person. And I did want to say I grew up in the purity culture and they used to say, like, bounce your eyes. And I've heard now, no, don't bounce your eyes. Don't run from this. It's better to look into the person's eyes and see them as a person. They're a person and not a body part. And so I really like that. Don't ignore them and kind of, squash that. I will say if you're deep into an addiction and that's where you are, you may need to bounce your eyes and run. That might, maybe if you're that deep into the addiction, then do that. But what I would want is for people to start to see people as people and to treat them that way, see the whole person.
Talk to the one thing you say is the brain is like novelty, and there's never ending selection online. And when you hear a story of someone who's addicted to porn, it starts. I want to be careful with this word, but it starts rather innocently. And again, I don't want to nuance innocently too much there, but so a person might look at a Sports Illustrated swimsuit issue, right? And, oh, that's my son. That's natural and natural for me, right? So then you look at that and then pretty soon you desire a little bit more and then a little bit more. And then now we're getting into, wasn't right when you just crossed the line, but now you're getting into dark pornographic sites and things. And like you say, not only are those so damaging, but there are kids on there as well. And so it's damaging spiritually and your mind, your heart, and even legally. You're moving into an area. If you don't get a hold on this thing, this thing just keeps sucking you in. There's probably a better way for a counselor to describe what I just said, but just kind of the hole that you can keep going into.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. Your brain does crave the novelty. So you're craving something different, something more. And as it can become an addiction, just like, start with one cigarette and then, people who are a pack a day. Okay. It happens gradually. And so where it may start with the Sports Illustrated swimsuit issue, which still could be and would be very offensive to someone married to that person and can be very lustful, it can build on that to like having different tabs open and all different videos and different. I don't want to get too graphic here, but just want to say that your brain wants to up the ante, and a lot of people get caught into things and view things that they are shocked that they have gotten into, and things that even they weren't even attracted to. And that's where the brain that changes. It starts to change what we call the arousal template. And it can even change that arousal template, which is really scary then if you're, married to someone like that and they're, changing their arousal template online and viewing things that they weren't even attracted to before. And I have heard people, once they get free from their addiction, they've had time away from it and they've kind of detoxed from it. They think, oh my goodness, I don't want to see that anymore, what they were looking at. And they get that distance from it and their brain starts to heal. And they really realize, no, I'm not interested in what I was viewing. And so it's really crazy what pornography can do.
Again, we want to emphasize this. A parent who would say, or even in a relationship, that your partner is into porn, whatever into means, viewing porn regularly. It's never a healthy way, but viewing porn. It's not just something that's natural or that's what guys do. This is messing with our heart because it's in disobedience to God's plan and His design. But it truly is messing with our brain and causing that addiction to become ingrained into our mind.
Exactly. Yes, it is. We talked about the reward system. Your brain rewards you by flooding you with neurochemicals, which reinforces the act and says, do that again. Even we're getting neurochemicals even when we eat food. It's like, do that again. We need that to survive. So dopamine, serotonin, norepinephrine, and epinephrine, and oxytocin can all be present in that full experience. And 4 of those neurochemicals, minus the oxytocin, are present in just the searching for, or like if you're driving to the drug dealer's house, let's say, or if you're about walking to your laptop and about to open it up and you know what you're going to go look for, 4 of those 5 neurochemicals are present in that process, in the pre-contemplation stage, in that like the driving to the drug dealer's house stage. Isn't that crazy? It's already present.
So talk to the parent, and then this is going to get into another area as well regarding relationships, but let's start with the parent. So some are going to say, hey, I know it's wrong, but my son, daughter going through puberty and hormones and it's a phase. It's a phase, and the phase is going to be over. And I don't want to make too big a deal of this because, the phase they're going through and it'll be over, and it's not going to have any damage long term on them or their relationship. So I'm going to, I'm not going to make a big deal of it. I'm going to let it ride, and it's all going to work out.
Mm-hmm.
Talk to that parent.
Well, back to the brain, what fires together wires together is what they say. So what fires together, so when they're watching that porn and those neurons are firing and the neural pathways are being created, it's wiring that way. So the more you watch, that path that road in your brain, so to speak, becomes a super highway. And the real intimacy becomes like an old back road. So there's like super highways that go to pornography and old dusty back roads that are real intimacy. And it can change back. Our brains are plastic, the neuroplasticity, but we do not want to create super highways to things that are not another person. It's a screen, it's pixels, it's fake, it's, causes depression, anxiety, performance issues, erectile dysfunction, all kinds of things, but it changes the brain. So for this parent, it's not, hopefully it could be a stage. Not everyone becomes an addict, just like with alcohol, but it can. And the younger, we said this in the last episode, but the younger they are exposed and the younger that habitual use becomes a thing, the more likely they are to be addicted. But it's changing the brain, and it's not for the better. It's not a good thing.
I saw as a secular research, it said those who are involved in pornography experience more loneliness. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So absolutely. I've heard studies that young people are having less sex, actually. And it's because of pornography. Some people are being quote unquote satisfied and less motivated to go out and find someone, in the secular culture, whether it's hookups or, relationships and things like that. But regardless, it's just kind of scary to think that somebody's going to, oh, no, you guys go have fun. I'm going to stay home and watch my computer by myself and do this. That's really sad. And it absolutely causes loneliness and shame, and just a downward spiral.
Here's a person, they have been involved in pornography. They viewed it consistently. They go off to college, and now it's not just a temptation, but everybody's talking about it on the hall and what site to go see. And so they go through the college years, and then they enter into a relationship. How does their viewing of pornography impact this relationship that they're in? How would you speak to that? Now we're looking at dangers that are moving into the next phase of life.
Right. Well, a lot of ways. So one is that the person who's really using this consistently, maybe it's becoming an addiction, they often appear to be checked out. That's something that I get from my clients all the time. So, he was just checked out. He was always, making an excuse to go to quote unquote, go to work, go do something on his computer. So kind of being checked out is because when you have those floods of the neurochemicals that we talked about earlier, your brain becomes used to that high level in your system, and then lower levels of dopamine that we would get by holding hands, watching a sunrise, watching a sunset. You're going to get some positive neurochemicals there, and you're going to feel, oh, this is so beautiful. Look at the ocean. Look at the sunrise. Somebody who's addicted to porn and getting that kind of flood of that supernormal stimulus all the time, they're going to feel nothing. They're going to feel nothing. It's not going to affect them. These positive experiences are no longer going to feel positive and rewarding to them. And so that's huge. So then how do you have a fun relationship? How do you be a partner or a spouse to that person when, normal things that they should enjoy with you they're not enjoying. Also in intimacy, it's less, oftentimes people say it's not mutually pleasurable. Sometimes the one who's using pornography, they're kind of viewing it in their mind. And so they're not present. They're not there. And that's what I hear from so many women is he's there, but not there, which is scary.
A guy who's viewing pornography, the things that should, warm our heart and make us feel that the old word, the fuzzy feeling, the pornography the addiction has overtaken the mind. Those things are just dulled by that, right?
Right.
Numbed by that.
Right.
And so then same thing in the relationship itself. So let's talk to you talk about what fires together, wires together, and how the brain again the impact that this is having on the brain. So if you would, Heidi, talk to those young women in relationships, and we got to be careful here, right? But talk to the young women in relationships, and what would be something? Maybe they're not. More than likely, a lot of guys are not going to come out and say, "Hey, let's go out together." And by the way, I'm addicted to porn, right? Um, what would be some of the things that a person could be looking for to to identify some signs that maybe there's some challenges in this area? You mentioned the married couple when they're involved in sex. She's saying he's there, but he's not there. But step back before that. What would be some things that a dating couple or an engaged couple could start looking at?
Yeah. So sometimes, checked out or feeling like there's a wall between you, shut down emotionally. A lot of times they're critical. A lot of times they're critical. And a lot of that is think of the expectations that they have. If they're used to pornography, think of the expectations that they have, even just not not sexually, but just think it's what their desires are just at their fingertips. They want something, they open their computer, they search for it, it's going to be there because the internet has it all, and then they shut it when they're done. And they don't have to worry about another person. So just think about, even outside of sexuality, that is not setting you up for a partner who has their own desires, their own ideas about what they want to do in life. And porn is very selfish. It's completely selfish. And so that's not setting you up for a good relationship. So yes, so they do oftentimes become critical. Communication is usually poor. And authenticity and openness is kind of on the opposite side. You want to look for that authenticity, openness, really good communication skills, things like that. So this is a really hard one because you can't know 100%. You can't. And another thing that I do see is that sometimes they can fake it for a while and be a good partner for a while. And part of it is because they're still in, the high of a relationship, like the honeymoon phase. And then once that wears off, and hopefully you're not married yet because, you could figure it out before you get married. But it happens to a lot of people where they don't notice these things until later. So being aware is really important, but there's not just a checklist that you can say, okay, if they have these things or if they don't have these things, I'm safe.
You mentioned when we were talking, one is the individual. Maybe they, when you meet them, they're like playing basketball with guys all the time at the gym, and then all of a sudden they lose interest in kind of the normal healthy activities.
Mm-hmm. Precisely. It's the same thing when we were talking about the brain, is that the normal things that you get some pleasure from, that you get dopamine and endorphins from, that doesn't satisfy anymore. And so they may I'll just let you guys go play basketball. I'm going to go do this because the natural high is higher from what they're getting from pornography.
Talk to the guys. I think this is pretty well substantiated by now and researched, but in our age where kids are growing up as digital natives, they've always had a phone, and the temptation has always been there. Now it's available. When they enter into a relationship after having, or not after having been, but being addicted to porn, the thing, there is performance issues. You mentioned the erectile dysfunction and those types of things. So talk about how sometimes we don't think we think we can get by with sin and it doesn't impact us, but it always has consequences, right? The second Timothy passage says it either shows up, the consequences of sin show up before we get there, or they trail behind, but they end up getting there, right? Talk about some of the things that are going to be present in a relationship later on when these addictions have been a part of a person's life.
Right. And this feels funny, in a Christian podcast with a pastor, but hey, we got to talk about it because these are real things that are happening to people. It's very, very sad. So yes, PIED stands for porn-induced erectile dysfunction. And that is really a thing. And that is because of that supernormal stimulus we were talking about. They're used to what is not real life. And that's what excites them. So a real human no longer excites them. And so they cannot perform then in a real life situation. So there was a study with Navy SEALs. And so they are extremely intelligent. They are optimum physical specimen. They are, they have it all together. And this doctor, so it was like a Navy SEAL doctor, was trying to figure something out because they were all coming to him saying they had erectile dysfunction. And he couldn't figure it out. Well, you're fit in every way. You're smart. There's nothing wrong with you. You're young. And that's what it was. It was pornography. Pornography was causing this erectile dysfunction in this type of person. Now, if it's going to happen to, a whatever 24-year-old Navy SEAL or whatever age, it happened. And it happens to my clients and their husbands. It happens. It is very, very real. So that is one of the real consequences for performance with long pornography use.
When we don't do things God's way, it never works out. Besides it being sin and impacting us spiritually, practically it doesn't work out. But it sounds counterintuitive, doesn't it? Because it sounds like the more you're viewing these things and involved in these things, the more sexual you're going to be in real life. But it's the opposite. It doesn't work like that.
It's the opposite. You're in isolation. And then when you actually have a person, you can't perform at times. And also it leads to things like depression and anxiety. And a lot of people then feel like, I don't even know how to talk to somebody of the opposite sex anymore. And it leads to isolation that way as well.
So you're sitting with a young woman. She is engaged. Her wedding is planned. They're going through all the, where's the reception going to be and all the food tasting and all that. And she learns that her fiance is addicted to porn. How would you counsel her?
So as a therapist, I would say differently than I would if I were her sister or her cousin or her friend. I'll say that. Okay. Because as a therapist, we can't make decisions for people. So I actually have had this situation happen a couple of times. And you have to help them realize, this is your life and, but this is a real thing. So I would educate them on if these things haven't happened already, if his personality, he hasn't gotten snippy, he hasn't gotten irritable, he hasn't gotten that way kind of regularly, this happens to people. It's like, oh no, not mine. Okay. Well, I would use examples of other clients without names or information that would identify them, but there's so many to draw from. I would just educate, hey, I know this is coming up. I just want you to know that you don't have to keep the date. You don't have to keep that date. I want to open this up for you. Feels like stigma, breaking up an engagement or pushing the wedding, but let's think about risk and reward here. It is not, to save face and have your wedding. This has potentially lifetime consequences. So why don't we talk about what can happen in these situations? And what about if this guy sounds like such a great guy. I know he has this issue. Why don't we stand by and watch him work through it? You're gonna face challenges in your marriage, and this is a good thing to watch, to see, okay, this is like a case study. Let's not get married before the case study's over. So I might make a little suggestion like that here or there, but of course I can't make the decision for him. But I might say, that's an option. Postponing is an option. Watching how he handles this. Does he meet with that accountability partner regularly? Does he meet with the pastor from time to time? What's his prayer life like? Is he in a Bible study? Those kinds of things, where you can watch. So, and I tell wives this too, is you tell them, that this is not, and this person I would tell too, is pornography. You can be bold and you can say, not in my marriage. I know we're not married yet, but I'm telling you now, if you're choosing pornography, then we shouldn't get married, because that's not okay in my marriage. I'm not going to have that. And you can say that whether you're engaged, dating, married, anywhere, you can say that. And, be bold about it. That is a godly thing to say. It's a loving thing to say. So, but I would really encourage maybe not encourage, I would lay it out there that they could move the date, they can watch these behaviors and see what happens. Because a lot of people are like, I'm going to get this, I'm going to do all these things, but that addiction is really strong. It's really compelling. And it's just not worth your life and your, all this money. I've heard people say, well, we already have the down payment on the band and we have this down payment and this down payment. Like, yeah, I know. And 10 years of therapy and all, like the breaking up the house and the kid, that's pretty expensive too. And it has a lot of other consequences.
We're talking, so there are going to be very few marriages, relationships where a guy hadn't struggled, and slipped and watched something he shouldn't have watched or done something. There are going to be some where there was addiction, but he's working through it and getting the help. But here we're talking about someone who's addicted and they're staying in it. They're not, wanting the help. And as you say, if this is the wake up call to say we're postponing the wedding so you'll get help, fantastic. Then we can postpone it and let things play out. We have a thing that we use, MATE. It's the acronym MATE, MATE. I do it a lot with young adults. I'm teaching a class coming up in Florida with about 150 young adults and studying 1 Corinthians, which 1 Corinthians has every issue you could possibly have, including sexual issues. But we talk about mate being, M is must have. This is what I must have in a relationship. And they always start, it's got to be a Christian. Okay, that's great. Got to be a Christian, but it can't be any Christian. So what are the other must haves? And then the A is add-ons. Here's some things it's not a must have, but I'd like to have in a relationship. The T is take it or leave it. He has a tattoo. It doesn't matter if tattoo or not, right? The E is end of the road. And that always comes up. I learned he is into pornography. That's the end of the road. Now, you're saying it may not be the end of the road, but it at least has to be a pause so that he can get healthy and begin the recovery, so that we can enter into this relationship in a spiritually healthy way, but also a physically healthy way as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it should be a major, major, major pause. I know people who come out of this and who have done the work, and it's almost like they're new and improved and better people than they were before they had the addiction. It's neat because addiction recovery, when you do the 12-step meetings or you meet with a therapist, you just do this deep dive, and so many people say you've kind of just opened up a world that you never had before. So you don't have to be afraid of people who have this in their history. You do well. I shouldn't say don't have to be afraid, because it. We say once an addict, always an addict, but they're in recovery. And solid recovery is an amazing person. So, but you do have to know that it's potentially in their genes, and it's something that they will have to work with their whole life. But can be fantastic. But yes, a major pause it should be, but it doesn't have to be the end. And it can be, like I said, kind of a neat case study to see how committed is he, how much does he want to be married to me, and how much does he, really want to kick this habit.
I am thinking of a couple individuals I've talked to and counseled, a lot of young adults getting ready to get married, and one I'm thinking about. They were far along in their relationship, and she learned he was involved in pornography, and she just ended it. She cut it off. He wouldn't agree to get the help, and so cut it off. And now she's married, happily married, and God has blessed that her decision there. Another couple I'm thinking about, they sat before me, and the guy had some struggles before, and the girl, the fiance, said very clearly, as you just said, not in my marriage, not going to do it. And that's not going to happen. And I thought, as she was saying that, I just appreciated her strength and her being adamant that, I get it. There's struggles, there are temptations, but when we're talking about an addiction like this, not going to be in this relationship.
Mm-hmm. And I like the point you made. I want to say too that I know when I was, in my early 20s, let's say, I had a different picture of what a Christian woman was supposed to be like and what a Christian wife was supposed to be like. And I wouldn't have had the courage to say that in that way, that the woman you just said. I don't know. I just thought, I just want to say that it's loving to say that. It's godly to say that. It's strong, and it's okay. You should say that. So don't be afraid and think, oh, I need to be this meek, agreeable, passive Christian wife. That's really not. No, you can be strong, and you can stand on the vows that you are about to make, or that you've already made before the church and God and everyone, and you can really advocate for that. And sometimes, or I should say most of the time, it is the partner that gets somebody into therapy, that gets somebody help. So you could be the key to their freedom. I don't want to put that on another person. It's not your responsibility at all. But most of the time, that's what gets them in the door.
Heidi, in our next time together, we're going to talk about a wife in a marriage relationship, and her husband is addicted to porn. And some of the emotions that she's going through, and some of the things that she needs to do for her own health and for his health as well. And I know you have some powerful things to say, and there are some women who really need to hear that and be encouraged along the way as well. As we get to that next time, anything today, as we talk about relationships and how pornography impacts those relationships, anything else you want to add to what we've been talking about?
I think just we talked about kind of signs that somebody might be involved in pornography. I think that something that I in a recent training, I love that they said, you want to create a life that you're excited about living. So natural dopamine hits. You want natural dopamine hits rather than the supernormal stimulus. And so somebody who's really living a healthy life, they're taking care of themselves. Not somebody who's into all kinds of bad habits, and they're always overstressed, and they're always undersleeping, and they're always, those kinds of things. Somebody who's clearly enjoying natural dopamine hits. That's going to be an indicator. And also friendships. So I mentioned, I think I mentioned communication, authenticity, openness, really feeling that vulnerability. Vulnerability is a big word too. Can they be vulnerable? Can they deep dive into emotion conversations? I've also noticed long-term friendships and current friendships that they keep in touch with. Those two things, 95% of the husbands that I see, or the husbands of the wives that I see, 95% of them can hardly name one friend. Cannot, or they'll name them, but do they communicate with them? Are they really a friend? No, they're not. They don't have real friendships. That's a huge red flag, is not having other male friends.
Well, I really appreciate, again, your insight and just the help that you're giving those who are listening. And we want to have one more episode regarding wives whose husbands are addicted, and the things that they need to be thinking about, and the actions they need to take, to prayerfully take, to deal with that situation. So we'll do that next time, and we look forward to having you again.
Thank you so much. I look forward to it as well.
Hey, thanks so much for joining us on today's podcast. I can't tell you how much I appreciate Heidi's expertise and her wisdom on this very challenging subject of pornography. Heidi is a Christian therapist. She owns Nova Counseling. And if you'd like more information or help in this area, be sure to check out her website at novacounseling.com. Now, one more thing. If you're in a relationship, or your young adults are in a relationship, what are some signs that your partner may be involved in pornography? This is a delicate topic that we're going to hit next time as we wrap up this 3-part series with Heidi. So be sure and join us. I want to thank our podcast team for making this episode possible. Our executive director is Jen Booth. Ryan Jorgen produces each podcast. Mark James delivers each podcast to you. Laura Crane promotes each episode through social media. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast on your favorite podcast platform and hit like. That simple hit on the screen helps us deliver our message to more and more people. Hey, thanks so much for joining us. We'll see you next time on the Journey podcast.